and welcome to the homework helper for section 3.2. Let's go ahead and get started. If you are having trouble with this initial section, this right here explains how to do the problem. So all you have to do is read this to have some additional help. Additionally, anytime you see topic, that would be a phenomenal thing to put into a search engine if my explanation doesn't help. That said, let me give you my explanation. Let's look at number 1 here. We have the square root of 40. It wants us to simplify each radical. And so to simplify the radicals, the first thing that we have to do is we need to factor the radicals. So when I think about a number like 40, the very first thing I do is I factor it out to all of its base factors. 40 immediately in my brain becomes 4 and 10. 4 is 2 and 2, and 10 is 2 and 5, right? So another way I could write 40 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. So then I need to square root this. And what is a square root thing? That means I take out anything that's a number times itself. What do I have being multiplied by itself? I have a 2 and a 2 right here. So what I do is this is a square, and I'm square rooting. So I undo the square, giving me a 2 outside the radical, and then underneath the radical I have whatever's left over, a 2 times 5, which is 10. So this simplifies as 2 root 10. Let's do the same thing for the next one. We have 50. So I see 50, okay, so I got 5 and 10, and then 10 is 2 and 5. And so now I'm looking for a square. Do I have a square here? You bet you. I have 5 and 5. So that's a square. When I square root it, I just have 5, and then underneath the radical I have what's left over, which is just 2. So the answer here would be 5 root 2. I'll do one more. This one's different. It's a cubed root. So now instead of finding a square, I need to find a cube. So 16 is going to be 2 and 8, and then 8 is 2 and 4, and then 4 is 2 and 2. And so now I need to find a cube. So I have 1, 2, 3 2's that I can pull out, and then left underneath the radical, I have a single 2. So the cube root of 16 is going to be 2 times the square root of 2. Now let's go on to the next section. The next section wants us to do a couple different things. It wants us to find, it kind of starts kind of simply with finding the arithmetic means. This means this is linear. Okay, so that means this is going in a straight line. So that means the number here is going to be the midpoint between them. So this is just going to be 11 minus 5. Or I'm sorry, 11 plus 5 divided by 2. So this is going to be 11 plus 5 over 2 is 16 over 2. It's going to be 8. 8. Okay. Here gets a little more complicated. It's like, oh, it's not just a midpoint. There's multiple things. So what I recommend we do in this sort of situation is we set up an equation. I know that this is going to be 18 plus my common difference. This is going to be 18 plus 2 common differences. And this is going to be 18 plus 3 common differences, which means this is 18 plus 4 common differences equals negative 10. So what I've done is I've created a little equation. My little equation is 18 plus 4d equals a negative 10. If I subtract 18, 4d equals a negative 28. If I divide by 4, d equals 7. So I know that at each step I'm really adding, whoops, that's a negative 7. Boop, I'm really subtracting 7. So that means that 18 minus 7, this is supposed to be 11. 11 minus 7, this is supposed to be 4. 4 minus 7, this is supposed to be negative 3. And negative 3 minus 7 is, in fact, negative 10, like we were supposed to do. Great, that's linear, that's arithmetic. Let's go to something more complicated. Let's go to geometric. So for geometric, that means I'm having to multiply each step. Okay? So this means this is 3 times some ratio, and that means this is 3 times some ratio squared, which equals 12. So 3 times r squared equals 12. Divide by 3, divide by 3. R squared equals 4, which means r equals 2, the square root of 4 is 2. So I know that this is actually going to be 6, 12. We do the same thing here. 7 times r, 7 times r squared, 7 times r cubed equals this. 7r cubed equals 875 divided by 7. R cubed equals, I have no idea what 875 divided by 7 is. 125, good to know. Is 125. And now I need to take the cube root of 125. Now, here's the thing. We know how to do this without a calculator now. Okay, so all I need to do is I take 125 and I start factoring it. Well, I know 25 happens 5 times, and I know that 25 is 5 times 5. 1, 2, 3. So the cube root of 125 is 5. So I know that r equals 5. So that means 7 times r, this is going to be 35. 35 times 5, I don't know what that is off the top of my head. 35 times 5 is going to be 175. Boom. 175, and 175 times 5 should be 875. Let me just do that and make sure I did this right. 175 times 5. Hey, I did it right. Now finally, we're going to figure out our half numbers for these geometrics. So what we need to do here is figure out what these factors are. The factor between whole numbers and the factor to move between each column. So to move from here to here and here, okay, so we're multiplying. So 4 times what is 16? We know that that's going to be 4. 16 times 4 will be, I don't know, 16 times 4 would be what, 64? Whoops. 16 times 4. Yeah, 64. So now I need to figure out what my factors from the halves are. So if this is 4, that means this and this times each other should equal 4. So f of c times f of c, so f of c squared should equal 4. So the square root f of c equals 2. So I know that this is actually 2. So that means 4 times 4 times 2 is 8. 16 times 2 is 32. And there we have it. Okay, let's do another one that's a little bit more complicated. So here we have, whoops, let me skip this down. Here we have from 4 to 8, I know I'm multiplying by 2, so 8 to, this is going to be 16. So from between the whole numbers, I'm multiplying by 2. Now from each column, I have to do it by a half. So that means f times c, or f of c times f of c, so f of c squared, should be the same thing as 2. Which means I square root it, f of c equals the square root of 2. So that means I'm going to multiply 4 times the square root of 2. And then when I multiply that by the square root of 2, I'll get 8. And then I do 8 times the square root of 2. And when I multiply that by the square root of 2, I'll get 16. And that's going to be my answer there. All right. Finally, evaluating functions. So it's pretty much going to give us either the x or the f of x. So think of it as we're either getting the x or the y, and we just have to find the other variable. So for example, a here says find f of negative 3. That means we plug negative 3 in for x. So f of negative 3 equals 2 times negative 3 minus 7, which is a negative 6 minus 7. So f of negative 3 equals a negative 13, negative 13. Now it says find f of x equals 21. So this means instead of f of x, we have 21 here. So let's go ahead and do that. 21 equals 2x minus 7. So if I add 7, 28 equals 2x, which means 14 equals x. So x equals 14. Okay? And so that's what we're doing for each of these. Don't be afraid of fractions. Just plug in a fraction and see where it takes you. That'll do it. That's our homework helper for tonight. Good luck, woodchucks, and I will see you tomorrow.